In an emotional and exclusive sit-down, Rasheeda has come out of the shadows to reveal the truth that the world has been waiting for. The reality star broke her silence about the horrific attack by male VCs that left fans in shock and the hip-hop community in ruins. Diva's admirers had hoped for forgiveness and healing, but what she revealed made it clear that some scars are too deep to ever heal. She didn't hold back as she shared her raw feelings of betrayal and broken trust that still haunt her. As Rasheeda got ready to delve deeper into the events that followed the warnings, the atmosphere in the interview room grew heavier. Betrayals of covered incidents were rampant. Tonight, we're going to delve deeply into Manny's shocking revelations, the reactions of those closest to her, and the reasons why this view may have just turned into the most explosive fallout reality has ever seen. Rasheeda's emotions were running high as her fans were shocked to learn that even some of their reality show producers allegedly tried to silence her after men horribly warned her to stay. She described how alienating it felt to be betrayed not only by someone she trusted, but also by a community she helped build. And friends who had previously supported her started to distance themselves from her out of fear of the potential backlash if they persisted, forcing her to remain silent during every phone call and unexpected knock on the door. Rasheeda acknowledged that she had debated for many nights whether to fight back or to leave quietly because she was worried that it might damage the franchise's reputation. However, every time she considered giving up, she recalled the line where they asked her why good people get hurt. Her child's expression served as her compass, encouraging her to speak the truth no matter how dirty it got. The internal conflict was tearing her apart, but she knew that keeping quiet would only give the attacker more power. She recalled a meeting she had with her legal team in a cold, sterile office shortly after the attack, where the responsibility became intense. Rasheeda's lawyer warned her that speaking out publicly could result in a harsh response, but she was determined to pursue justice for more than just anonymous threats, unsettling messages, and strange phone calls. Fans are shocked because she said that filing charges wasn't just an emotional decision, but rather a calculated action to defend herself and all women who had ever been silenced by fear, loyalty, or manipulation. Rasheeda set a strong example by talking about the heartache she went through when she saw social media posts defending Mendeecees from people she had celebrated and trusted with her. After discovering that some of her closest friends were allegedly supporting him behind her back, she got cold from the constant Rasheeda said that it was tempting to leave and pretend nothing had happened. But every time she considered doing so, she mentally reenacted the horrific attack and realized she couldn't ignore it. Fans are shocked to learn that while guys were in prison, according to reports, influential people in the entertainment industry encouraged her to fight. Rasheeda also talked about a secret meeting she set up with a few brave friends, which Kirk encouraged her to do, but other family members begged her to keep quiet for the sake of maintaining calm. In an attempt to have the charges dropped, the world tried to help him by making calls, pulling strings, and offering money in an unethical manner, but Rasha refused to back down. Some were too afraid to come forward and support her in speaking the truth, but others agreed to risk their safety and reputations to help her expose the truth of what Rasheeda discussed. Deep down, she knew she had arrived despite the innumerable sleepless nights, panic attacks, and heartbreaking moments of doubt she had while sitting alone in her living room, scrolling through abusive messages online, wondering if she was strong enough to weather the storm. The emotional toll was too great to reverse, and she had started a movement. There were evenings when Rasheeda seriously considered leaving the reality show entirely because she no longer felt secure there and no longer trusted the false promises of loyalty and family that were initially made. One of the worst parts of the conversation was when Rasheeda described how she began to notice strange cars parked close to her house and strange faces hanging around outside her because of the ripple effects the conflict was having. She was standing, alone with tears in her eyes and a calm voice. Rasheeda concluded this portion of her story by vowing that she would not be silenced. She wasn't sure whether this was paranoia or reality, but she promised that fear would not stop her from fighting, despite the possibility of losing sponsorship or having her contract canceled. Not defining her story, she looked directly into the camera and said, "You can try to scare me, but I will." In the days after the interview, social media was ablaze with fan comments, some of which defended Rasheeda, while others sent her encouraging messages. Others questioned her intentions, accusing her of trying to ruin a man's life for power and feelings. "I would owe it to myself, my family, and all women who have been told to keep quiet." As a result, her quest for justice took an even more dramatic turn. Despite the chaos, Rasheeda remained calm in public, but behind closed doors, the pressure was too much for her to handle, and for hours, Perk tried to shield her from the worst of it, but even he was unable to stop the tidal wave of negativity that swept over his family. And Rasheeda admitted to closing her eyes as she paced her living room, reading hateful comments and wondering how people could be so blind to the reality. But every time she thought about taking a step back, she thought of the horrified cries of the other women who had spoken up about friends she occasionally regretted because of the terrible toll it took on her mental health and family stability. They confided in her because they now see her as a source of strength, and they had no plans to leave. One evening, while going through her messages, Rashi received a direct message from an anonymous account claiming to have video of the incident, promising that it would serve as proof of everything. Rasheeda wept with relief, wrath, knowing that she now had evidence that could change everything she had said. She called her lawyer right away, and he warned that releasing the film could result in legal punishment, but it felt better to keep it secret. In the end, justice won out, and her hands trembled as she hit play. The grainy video showed a portion of the fight, with Mendeecees lunging at her and yelling threats. The conflict took place in courtrooms, leaving fans shocked and confused, not knowing what to anticipate, as Rasheeda's team painstakingly worked behind the scenes to prepare for the deadly clash. Timelines were recreated, witnesses were lined up, and every detail was scrutinized, and the dilemma added a new level of stress. Tension between Rasheeda and Kirk reached a boiling point, one particularly hot night when they got into a heated argument over whether to release the film, which Kirk believed would only make matters worse. Rasheeda had fabricated the events for gain, threatening to harm their family, but Rasheeda insisted that keeping the truth would destroy her feelings. As people who had initially agreed to testify started to withdraw out of fear of the abuse and threats they would face, it felt like betrayal again. But Rasheeda persisted and would stand by the highly crisis management team. Fans were shocked when Rasheeda announced in a live interview that she would be filing a new lawsuit after spending days writing in her journal to make sense of the chaos in her life. The action was bold, dangerous, and sure to push an already stressful situation into a full-scale conflict, leaving the family devastated no matter how things got. If she had to, she cried out, "I can't live like this, Kirk. I can't keep pretending everything's good," when Rasheeda fled Atlanta for a few days and retired to a remote cabin where she could clear her mind in a desperate attempt to find some peace. In a private phone conversation with mutual acquaintances, he allegedly threatened to make sure she regretted it for the rest of her life. Although the threat was not specifically directed at Rasheeda, it sent chills down the spines of those who heard it. Others close to him claimed that he was shocked by the new accusations and felt deceived by a woman he had once considered a friend. She refused to let fear dictate her choices and would fight not only for herself, but also for every voice that had been silenced before her. Despite the flaws and incompleteness of the recording, the damage was done, and public sentiment started to shift in Rasheeda's favor after a covert tape surfaced online that purportedly showed Mendeecees admitting to part of the attack during a heated argument with one of his associates. However, success came at a cost as Rasheeda's economic activities faltered. Just as fans in her hometown were devastated to see their beloved actress living in constant terror and a prisoner of circumstances she didn't want to be defeated because she felt her family had vanished without warning, and the emotional toll was frequently unbearable. But she maintained the impression that she had survived. As the stakes increased with each new revelation, Rasheeda prepared herself for the upcoming legal battles, media attention, and personal attacks. She also decided that she would never again be silenced because the struggle she had fought and survived was far from overly violent. She realized that she could never go back to that version of herself because too much had been broken and too much had come to light. Although several brand partnerships withdrew out of fear of being dragged into the drama at a heartbreaking point during the interview, Rasheeda revealed that she missed the carefree woman who loved madly, laughed aloud, and believed the journey was worth it, even if it meant walking this dark path alone. Carve a new path forward, stronger and wiser. Voice recordings and witness statements revealed more details about what had happened between her and NZ that fateful night. What had initially appeared to be a single, isolated outburst was now revealed to be part of a troubling pattern of conduct. Many people who had previously questioned Rasheeda's story suddenly showered her with love and apologies after learning the extent of her suffering, leaving fans in shock. However, with the truth out in the open, Mendeecees became more dangerous than ever before. Late one night, Rasheeda's security team discovered a suspicious man loitering near her, stating that he was eager to restore his failing reputation and would stop at nothing to reverse the course of events. The man flooded the property in his favor before he could be caught, but the incident left her shaken. Was it a random intruder, or had the threats against her finally escalated into actual danger? Rasheeda resisted intimidation and strengthened her defenses instead of being forced to leave her own life, while Kirk fought to keep their family together, while he watched helplessly as the woman he loved was weakened by sorrow. She rarely slept, and frequently woke up in the middle of the night, covered in the media. And Detecting in the Water entered the story with such intensity that even seasoned journalists were shocked. Every court filing and leaked message made headlines, was discussed on talk shows, and there was a continuous debate about whether Mendeecees' physical assault had destroyed Rasheeda's sense of safety and faith in people. And she struggled with feelings of betrayal that went deeper than she could express behind closed doors as the world watched in frantic search for answers. She spent hours in therapy trying to speak with a former friend of Mendeecees in a covered deposition because she felt so alone and isolated from an experience that no amount of sympathy could erase. She prepared herself for the impending character, assassination, knowing that it would take her courage to confront the lies and deceit, knowing that cross-examination would be harsh and that Mink's attorneys would do everything in their power to discredit her. Even as supporters gathered around her, even more damaging details alleging that Mendeecees had boasted about bullying witnesses and falsifying evidence to protect his reputation, the testimony shocked the legal community, bolstering Rasheeda's case and pushing Rasheeda's staff to work tirelessly to prepare her for the difficult journey ahead, telling her that public opinion was shifting even more in her favor and that half-truths that would soon be used against her, but no amount of preparation, could completely protect her from the pain that lay ahead. In a shocking turn of events, Rasha learned that Mendeecees was reportedly considering accepting a plea deal. For a short while, Rasheeda was hopeful that this nightmare would end without a brutal public trial, but as she considered the possibility of publicly apologizing and accepting a lesser sentence in exchange for dismissing the additional accusations, she spent days debating the decision with her lawyers, her family, and her own wounded instincts, wondering if an apology was sufficient, and if a few well-chosen words could truly mend the harm he had caused. Urshika sat in her lawyer's office and looked at the plea deal that was offered to her on a rainy afternoon that seemed to reflect the anguish in her soul. The words blurred together as tears filled her eyes, reminding her that accepting a settlement meant that Rasheeda resisted Washington, D.C.'s harsh cross-examination, which was intended to misrepresent her remarks and paint her as spiteful and opportunistic by bringing up her past business relationships and anything else they could to undermine her. They changed her account, saying that she had survived it and was now in charge of it. Outside the courts, fans gathered with expressions of support, and social media was flooded with heartfelt statements from celebrities expressing solidarity with After weeks of tearful testimony and innumerable tears, the matter was finally sent to the jury behind the headlines. Rasheeda sat with Kirk, clutching his hand tightly, and they waited for what seemed like an eternity as the foreman held his ground as he read the judgment in the courtroom. Rasheeda's defense team made a last-ditch attempt to launch a counterattack, and men took the stand to offer a heartfelt apology that many saw as little more than a last-ditch effort to restore his deteriorating reputation. Fell into complete silence when the jury returned. Was not a singular incident, but rather a part of a much larger pattern of behavior. She had fought for justice and won, but the victory was bittersweet because it reminded her of everything she had given up along the way. Manik sat motionless, his face white, as the judge handed down a sentence that would see him spend a significant amount of time in prison, leaving his once glittering career in ashes, guilty on all counts. A collective gasp echoed through the room, and then Rasheeda and her supporters started to weep. Kurt took her in his arms and held her while she sobbed. After the verdict, Rasheeda went outside the courthouse to address the crowd at a time when it would have been more convenient. To remain silent, she praised survivors personally, telling them that they were not alone and that their voices were trembling with emotion.